have one of the greatest women alive.
That's too much.
Today is amazing. I can tell you for sure. So today we have a guest who has done it all. She's scooped all the awards that are there to be scooped. She has impacted the world of a girl child. And she's continuing to do amazing stuff. I can't wait to hear all of it with you guys. So welcome today. This is Michael Kimari. You can call me MK for Impact Masters Media. And I would like to welcome Leyla Hussein Gikandi.
Thank you for name checking. Yeah.
Yeah, how are you, Leyla?
I'm good. Thank you for having me. This is really cool. Yeah, I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Yeah. So it's interesting, like we're having this conversation because this Impact Media is just highlighting the impact in the tech ecosystem. Mm-hmm. And you can't talk about tech ecosystem without mentioning agriculture because it has been a push for a couple of decades right now across the world to get agriculture on the tech, either building at the center of it because they keep saying that if half of the team is playing, you're getting half of the winners.
Absolutely.
And it's quite interesting to know that what you've been doing for a long time actually contributes a lot to ensure that the girl child get the same space, get the same resources, get the same knowledge. And one more aspect of this is that we can't start talking about all that and all the numbers without knowing who is Leyla. Like, beside what we know, what is out there, what is published, tell us who is Leyla. Where did Leyla start from?
That's a very good question. I mean, my family's from Somalia, but I had a very interesting childhood. Mm-hmm. So I grew up between Italy and Saudi Arabia, all the places in the world, because a quick history about Somalia, the south of Somalia where I'm from, it's an Italian colony. Yeah. And the Somali language wasn't written till the 70s. Yeah. And so my parents had to study in other languages. My dad studied in Italian, my mother studied in Arabic. Yeah. So it meant a lot of, there were not many jobs. My dad was actually a civil engineer. Yes. And left for Saudi Arabia just before I was born. Mm-hmm. And I think 10 days after I was born, I was in Saudi Arabia. And he was working for an Italian company. Mm-hmm. So Italy was my second home as a child. So I used to go to Italy quite a lot. Italy was part of my upbringing. Yeah. And then I actually went to school. I went to private school in Italy. This is before the war. The war happened in Somalia. I think now people know Somalia is a war-torn country full of extremist groups. Yeah. The Somalia I knew wasn't like that. It was a very mixed, cosmopolitan part of the world. Yes. Some of the most beautiful coasts you'll ever see. Mm-hmm. Not being biased.
No, it's
really one of the most beautiful. And I lived in Mogadishu, which is on the coast, right? Yes. And so that was really my early. And I had very interesting parents. My mom was an economist who worked for the government. Mm. My dad, obviously an engineer, and then became a big entrepreneur in Somalia and traveled a lot for work. So actually my parents made a big decision early on, which is very uncommon for Somalis, which is just to have 2 children. I don't know if anyone's listening to this. Somalis, we have minimum 7 children. That's if you have 4, you just can't. If you have 4, it's like you tried. It's like you did not have kids. So that was quite radical for my parents to make a decision, because my dad was traveling quite a lot and they wanted to travel together. And I had 2 parents which is it's quite rare to see in our African community, 2 people are really in love with each other. So I was very lucky to see 2 parents who are deeply in love with each other and respect each other. Yes. So I saw that quite early on. So that really influenced who I'm going to become, I guess.
Amazing.
So for me, that was quite my childhood was very that. And then something really terrible happened somewhere along the line where Somalis, we have a practice called female genital mutilation, FGM, which happened to me at the age of 7. So you can imagine, you're in this love bubble, protective bubble, and then boom, something like this happens to you, and then everybody pretending it didn't happen, we just carry on, and then this becomes a big issue somewhere along the line. So that's really my early, and that experience has really very much influenced everything I do now.
but here you are, you've been born 10 days in Saudi Arabia, Italy. How was your childhood? Like, how was that? Were you traveling a lot?
I traveled a lot. I was very privileged. I lived a very privileged life. You know, the big houses, the drivers, the best schools, holidays. Like every summer we went to Europe. That was my childhood in Africa. I didn't even know Africa was poor until I went to the UK. Like I'm like, oh, I didn't know. I saw it on TV. I was like, oh, I didn't know. I mean, I tell this story where my parents took us to India to teach us about poverty, and I lived in Somalia. So imagine they take us there, and my mom would say to me when you leave your plate still full, she would remind us, do you remember those kids who didn't have food in Bombay? It was called Bombay back then, not Mumbai, like it is now. And so we had me and my sister, we had a very privileged life where we,
so you know, two girls.
It was we have a brother came afterwards, but he was born during the war, so he had a whole different experience of life compared to me. Was he born
also in Somalia? Or?
He was born. He was born in Ethiopia.
Okay.
During when people were moving around, like literally, my mom falls pregnant in the most interesting. We joke that she forgot to take her pill around that. We have this joke in the family. We're like, wow, it's good. Even during when people were trying to flee wars, you two still had time to really hang. Made a baby. Hey, listen, my parents were very open about the love and attraction they had for each other. So it was. So my brother has a whole different experience to me and my sister. So he's heard all these stories. I mean, he managed to go back to Somalia, but that was my childhood. Like, I had access. I was a girl who had access.
Yes.
And then obviously, and I was lucky enough. We were privileged enough to not even witness the war. So a country knows when something's about to go down.
Yes.
So my parents had such access. They knew it was about to go down. So it was like me, my mother,
so
my
they were
sister.
privy to the information.
It's like people had this inside information. Something's about to go down. There was something. My parents would tell me later on. They sensed the energy shifting with people. So it was like. So my father said, actually, 3 we go back to. You need to leave the country.
I'm not sure if you're privy to like what started the war, but maybe in a nutshell, like what caused the chaos.
To be honest, the fact that I didn't know there was such poverty in my country is what caused. Because the gap between the privileged and the poor was so distant that I couldn't even see it. That's what caused. And tribal issues, because there was one group of people that was benefiting from everything and not the rest. And that causes a lot of anger and frustration. And I think, I can't go to
say enough is enough.
Enough is enough. And it's been brewing for many, many years by then. And that's that. I mean, in a nutshell, that's what really.
Well, I don't want to jump the gun, but do you think with the stabilization, the government, are things coming to normalcy, or they're creating another chaos?
I mean, my family goes back my mom goes back every year. She absolutely, there's a massive change happening in Somalia. Actually, Somalians have proved. Positive change. Somalia, especially in the South, have proved you can actually function without a government. We functioned without a government for over 20 years. We had some of the best businesses. We had millions going into the country, millions going out of the country. We were telling the world, you can function without a government. But obviously then they had to have a government to be part of the world again. So in a way, it's like they hacked the whole system. So people, there's a lot of diasporas now going back, rebuilding. If you really get a chance, look at pictures in Mogadishu right now. It's absolutely beautiful. It's thriving. There's, people are rebuilding their homes again. But I also feel there's a sense of, it could be political, but there's this, and now we have oil.
Yes.
So that worries me a little bit.
Yes.
When a country like that has an oil, we worry because there are other people who might want that resources. So
okay.
That's all I would say. MK, that's all I'm gonna say.
And one thing that I've noticed about Somalis, because where I was born, actually I interacted with most of the Kushite, not just Somalis, but the Kushite tribe. They're quite entrepreneurial.
Oh yeah.
And open-minded.
Somalis are shocked till today that people go to school for business.
Yeah. And they love Somali, like the cultures, they love it to death.
No, being a business owner in the Somali community, it's like part of who you are. Like, we don't go to school, so they are shocked when people go to university and they're like, why? That's so easy. Why would you go to so there's a natural entrepreneurism. Just now, literally early on, I was on a call with one of my nieces who lives here. She was like, we just opened a shop in Kilimani Mall that does all the Somali garments because I needed some for my sister's wedding.
Yes.
I'm like, this is Somali sweet. They literally, for them opening a business, it's not big, as they call it these startup companies. We've been startups for a very long time.
Yes.
But except we just didn't think we had to go to school for it.
Yes.
So being natural entrepreneurs, it really is part of the culture in the Somali community.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that side of Somali is quite fascinating. And for you, when I was checking out, like, who is Dr. Hussein, I was like, you are not that old, I say, in terms of, years. But what you have achieved is amazing. Like, you are a doctor, you are the most recognition from the British Empire.
Yes,
right?
the word empire sounds so terrible. Oh my gosh.
Yes, and I'm like, okay, how was your school life until you get PhD, doctor?
So let me clarify my PhD. It's an honorary PhD. There's a great story behind the PhD actually. So I trained as a psychotherapist. So the same university I went to. But what I did as soon as I left, I set up the first ever counselling service for FGM survivors globally.
Specifically.
Literally, no one has ever set up that kind
That
of
is
clinic.
at the university level.
So I designed it while I was still in university, but I launched it after I left university. No one has done it. Like, it was the first one ever. Like, I couldn't even go to anyone to find out who's done it, but they talked about mental health, but no one has done it before. So I launched. It's called the Dahlia Project, and what I recognized very quickly when I was trained as a therapist, the therapeutic world was only designed for Westerners, not for women like my mother, women that look like our mums. It wasn't designed. It was very Westernized. So what I started doing, I started changing a lot of the values and principles of therapeutic spaces. And I'll give you an example. We had a group of Eritrean women who were in a support group. And during an assessment, I would ask, what do you need in order to feel this is your space? And they wanted a tea ceremony with popcorn, because that's what Eritreans drink. Well, so they're similar therapy. There's a therapist in the room, but they're drinking tea, spicy tea, popcorn, because that's what Eritreans and Ethiopians and Somalis like to drink when they're connecting. So we introduced that, and we realized a lot of the women who was coming to the clinic were illiterate. They couldn't read. So they were not going to therapy because they couldn't. They couldn't read the names of the address. They didn't know how to get there. So
they can't get it.
So what we did, I presented a couple of documentaries. Every film, when you're making film or producing, as you're producing, there's always a runner. They call it the runners, right? They go and get the script, get the coffee, get the lunch for everybody. So I created a runner for my counselling service. So we will offer the women, when we invite for an appointment, we have an option for someone to pick you up, because they know the local supermarket, but they don't know the name of the street. So someone will pick them up from the supermarket. So that I was criticized by the Western therapeutic world. It was like, she's breaking boundaries. She is not practicing what she was taught in you. So I was being forced to have the therapeutic approach, the Western therapeutic approach on African women or Asian, which was not working. I'm like, wait a minute, we're gonna have to create. So I was criticized to the point where they wanted to take my license away. They wanted to take my license away. It was really, but I insisted. I'm like, no, and I said, this is the way it should be. This is how, if Somali women want to eat meat during their therapy, we're going to get them, they're going to do that. We're going to have to do it their way. We're going to, because they were saying I was having too much of an interaction with, and I said, no, actually, as Africans, when we are dealing with conflict, we sit under a tree in a circle, we bring food. So I started, but then what happened? The clinic became oversubscribed. And then the media picked up on it. Everybody, so all these black and Asian therapists came and supported me in saying, this is what we need to be doing. And then the film came, the documentary came out, we were nominated for a BAFTA. All of a sudden, they couldn't criticize me anymore. So the same people are the ones who gave me my doctorate for my great clinic. For creating, so they now wanted to own me again as the university saying, oh, she's one of us, we trained her. So it was a very important award to receive, because I was being criticized for creating a therapeutic space for African women. So that's what led into my honorary doctorate.
It actually happens a lot. And the reason why I started this podcast vlog, whatever, is just to record our story, tell the way it is, without any influence, and tell the way it is. Because there's so many young guys, there's so many guys even our age who are confused. Should we tell the way it is? Should we conform to the Western way? But we are 1 billion people.
Exactly.
Maybe 90% of those are the most skilled people we have found in the world, the most creative. And it's showing in different ways at the moment. So maybe if you don't mind, you can share your experience now that you say the privilege. I don't know what that is. I can only
I'm privileged in certain spaces.
But just if my guess is right, you could go to any school that you wanted.
Not in the UK.
Not in the UK.
No. See, that was so we went from being very privileged to now becoming refugees. So we now live in the most deprived, rat-infested, cockroaches buildings. I remember saying to my mom, what did we do? Like, did we do something wrong? Like, I swear to God. So imagine, and so parents, and this is very common with refugee children, your parents don't tell you it was about to go down. It was like, we're just going. And my parents never went to the UK. My mom hated the UK. She hated the weather. She hated the food. I don't think we've ever been, I think we've had a connection flight through London. Never we stopped in London. All of a sudden, we're going to the UK. It was the UK and Australia, I think, were taking refugees at the time. So my dad wanted to go to Australia.
Canada then was not taking.
They were, but they were taking people from refugee camps. So there was the privileged families who can get on a plane and actually go to the UK. And it was $20,000 per person. So
you only pay that. It's a fee.
It's a fee you pay to get on a plane. Like, that's what people. So the refugees who ended up in London and the Europeans are the privileged Somalis, because they could afford to get on. They could pay their own flight and leave. But where others have ended up, from what I hear, like a lot of refugee camps here in Kenya. So America and Canada took refugees from these camps. Hence, we live the UN camps, right? So we thought, me and my sister thought we were on another holiday. We're going to the UK, and then slowly, we moved to this like very rundown part of East London. Oh my God! When I say rundown, there was like drug dealers there. I mean, it was like you watch those American movies, you know, where Jay-Z grew up. That's the equivalent I went to in London. All of a sudden, I had to walk to school for the first time, because before I had a driver. Now we are walking to school. I'm queuing up for my food, because the schools me and my sister went to was private Italian schools where food was brought to the table, to us like a restaurant. Can you imagine the shock? No one told you.
Were you stressed or you depressed?
We were, no, it was shocking. It was very, I think because I'm the oldest and my dad was on there, I quickly took on the role of the other parent. I had to be supported from my mother, so I became an adult from the age of 12. I was no longer a child. 12, I was an adult.
You got the leadership skills.
Right, exactly. Do you see how I'm going to be shaped very quickly? Because my dad wasn't there, so I became my mother's confidant. Like, I was running everything. I would go to the housing office with my mother. Like, there was and me and my mom till now, we have this very interesting bond from that very traumatic experience. So nobody was crying or being upset, but we can see something really bad happened. You know, where I see my mother cooking and cleaning for the first time, when before she didn't do that.
So it was someone to do it.
in Somalia, we had someone to do that. We had a whole staff in the house. We had 3 people working in the house. So my mum was cooking and cleaning. We walk into school, and my mum was now saying, it won't last for too long, we will go, this is just temporary, like we're gonna go back. That was 1992. How many years?
When things are really bad.
That was really bad, yeah. Because we left just before the war kicked off, 1989, towards the end of 89.
Yes.
And then for 2 years we've just been between, we keep coming back and then going back to Italy. Yes. We were like in between.
Yes.
And then when things got really bad, it was like, okay, we have to now go and settle somewhere. And this is when things were really bad.
Yes.
So 92. And yeah, so we went from privileged life to now but you know, but can I be honest?
But let me ask you.
Yeah.
Sorry, but I'm sure most people would ask this question. Poverty in Somalia, Mogadishu, and poverty in London, East London. Someone will say, at least I'm in London.
Right. Oh, no. Oh, absolutely. But remember, you're talking to a girl who didn't even know her country was poor.
Yes.
I didn't even know what Somali poverty was like.
Yes.
Like, you can imagine how disconnected. There's a reason why the war happened. I want to really stress that. The reason the war happened, there was genuine divide.
Between the have and the have.
Like, literally, they didn't even cross paths by accident.
It was that
divided. It was that divided. Like, you really didn't see it. But I remember my parents telling me a story how, so I think most African parents do this. Even when you go to school, you still have a tutor that comes into the house teaching you.
Yes.
And my parents said it was that tutor that said, if something happens, you better get out very quickly because your house will be attacked.
Yes.
So she didn't even went into details.
Yes.
And as soon as the war kicked off, our house was the second house that was looted.
What?
It was looted. And then years later, my mum bumped into this teacher in London somewhere. She managed to get out. And she said in the house that she lived in, which was not a very well-to-do family, like she was renting a room from them.
Yes.
She goes, I could hear the conversations. If there's something happens, we're going to attack that house, we're going to attack that house. So she goes, there was a whole plan being put in place to attack certain people.
Yes.
So when I went to London, for me, that was the first time I experienced poverty. So London was my first poverty experience. It's crazy.
Fascinating.
Yeah. It's my first poverty experience.
And even to me, actually, I'm like, I've never had this side of story because I know a few people who have been privileged, but not so privileged, but I've not had their story. Like, how is it to transition and how is it to rebuild? Because now, if you're in that state now, your mind switches on and you're like, I need to rebuild that experience that I moved out.
But can I tell you?
Yeah.
That was the best thing that could have happened to my family.
In
the long run. I'll tell you why. Because the life we led in Mogadishu, we were close family, but there was a gap. My father was busy just making money. He was never in he would go away for 6 weeks. Those days you didn't have flights, regular flights. If you left, you were away for at least 3 weeks, 4 weeks. So there wasn't. The war has made us so close because now we are. I mean, my dad didn't join us for 2 more years after that.
Yes.
My parents genuinely thought they were going to go back.
Yes.
My dad was going to wait around.
Yes.
And things will calm down. And there was 3 attempted assassinations on him.
How powerful was your dad?
My dad. Oh my God, he's an amazing man. Oh my God. He's a big part of who I am too. By the way, he was. Again, my parents grew up in the most interesting time in Somalia. So they were both born into colonization. So they knew freedom. Like, they really felt freedom. So they were born into colonization. Then, obviously, they were free, right? So they saw both sides. So they really embraced their freedom. Yes. So they were lovers of art and music. I mean, I was telling one of my colleagues yesterday, my mom's hand luggage whenever she traveled was her records.
Records.
She's a big music lover. Music lover.
What kind of music?
Oh my God, she loves Somali bands. She loved disco funk. I was introduced to Motown very early on in my childhood. Even though we didn't speak English, but we knew all the Al Green songs and Diana Ross. We knew all of them because it was a big music house.
Yes.
So I remember being in that kind of environment. But so I was saying, my dad, there was a 3rd assassination on him, and But him moving back to the UK, he
Yes.
finally joining us. I think 94 is when we realized, okay, we're not going nowhere. We're going to be here. No
For
one's
a
going anywhere.
long time.
For a very long time.
Yeah.
But what it gave us, and we talk about this till now, then by then we have our little brother, who's my brother, by the time we came to the UK, he was 4 months. So he doesn't know that life. He only knows UK life. But what it gave us is a family unit that we still have till now. So in a way, it was the best thing. Because me and my sister joke that if the war never happened, we would have been the Paris Hiltons of Mogadishu. And that doesn't sound like a good thing. Doesn't sound.
Yeah.
I mean,
So are you saying privileged life throughout your life where you don't know poverty, you don't know stress, you
we
don't
didn't
know
have
depression?
we didn't have real life experience.
It was
I
only.
think the FGM experience was real life for me. That was the most traumatic experience.
And even as being privileged, you had to go through the FGM.
Can you imagine? So this is the thing, right? My story, my work has always been, people have this assumption, especially the West has an assumption, oh, FGM only happens to people who are not educated. I'm like, no. My mother, her dad was a doctor.
Yes.
He took her to the hospital himself. FGM is about controlling women. It's controlling the female body. It's controlling female sexuality. It's not about religion and culture.
Yes.
I hate when people put that, wrap it around in that. It's not that. We live in a society where we want to control women, full stop.
Yes. And let's talk about FGM for a minute. But before that, you're also big on HIV/AIDS. And I remember in the 90s, and when I share my story and say why that is so personal to me, it's like wiped African, literally.
Yeah.
Like across. And I think even this is still happening in South Africa. And it's been. And one of the things that actually, most of the people who are affected by these are women.
Absolutely.
To start with, because if someone gets sick, in African culture, a woman takes care for everyone. So, how was that related to FGM and
Again, everything I got involved in was by accident. I never actually
planned
everything
to do
happened. Like it's like the universe
Yes.
guided me from undergoing FGM, taking me out of my privileged life to the UK. Really shaped who I am today. I don't think I would be doing any of this if that didn't happen to me.
Yes.
So the HIV conversation came up during my work around violence against women, especially around FGM, because
Yes.
so when they're cutting girls, they cut them in groups. And during those procedures, you can actually be infected with HIV. So a lot of girls were infected
Because you're sharing the
like
knife
blade, so
or the
blood
blades,
is just being like
all
shared.
over.
Oh my God, it's really bad. And not just that, a lot of the girls who have undergone FGM have experienced, so there was a wave of, and it's still happening somewhere,
Yes.
where men felt, if I have sex with a virgin,
Yes.
my HIV will disappear. So a lot of girls
What?
were raped. So
What?
imagine they're closed, their genitalia is totally closed. Now they've been raped. Now
It's
they've been
raptures.
diagnosed
Yeah.
with HIV. And guess what happens in the community? She gets ostracized. She's the one kicked out, called, people say she's a witch. And she's only 11. Like you can imagine. So when I say my work around, it's not just the girl child. My work has been around the African girl child.
Yeah.
So if you look at the statistics of WHO, the World Health Organization, clearly states
Yes.
the most vulnerable human being in the world
Yes.
is the girl African child. She's the one who's left behind. No one ever remembers. Every time something goes down in the world, she's the last one we think of. Because she's not even, the fact that she's born female, the fact that she's born black, and she's now in Africa.
Yes.
In a part of the world we think is developed.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's so you can imagine. So FGM and HIV has been attacking those two groups the most. Hence why now we don't even talk about HIV anymore.
So you
for
could not
me,
address FGM without addressing HIV and AIDS.
not just that. When you're addressing FGM, you have to address obviously HIV and AIDS. You have to address inequality. You have to address all forms of gender-based violence. You have to address economical abuse, because FGM happens. So a parent, especially in Kenya, you guys have a practice where the girl gets cut, mutilated, next day or a few days after she's married off. And I'm using air quotes here. I don't believe a child can be married
Forgive
off.
my,
I hate
forgive
that
my
word.
ignorance.
Yeah.
Forgive my ignorance. Because I have the information I have about FGM and there's the facts about FGM. So number one, I know some of the communities that I've read and investigated that they do FGM specifically is to control a woman.
It's to control the female body and her sexuality.
Yes. Yeah. So that if a guy goes to ASO or to look for food and money and whatever, she cannot go outside the marriage.
Yep.
And I understand when you say someone is cut and then they're married off.
Yep.
Because it's like a maturity transition.
And it's to do with economics.
Yes.
The parents cannot afford to keep her in the house anymore.
So it's a commodity. They turn out to be a commodity.
Well, if she leaves, then less money for the family to spend. It's less mouth to feed. But it's the girl who gets sacrificed in the family.
Yes.
So it's the moment she's 8-9 years old, she's going to be cut, being given away to a man who's 45, and that leads to other forms of abuse, and even to a lot of physical abuse in terms of if she gets pregnant, her body can can't even carry a baby.
Yes.
So they end up having something called fistula.
Yes.
Fistula is when the vagina
and
wall
really
breaks. It's bad.
Yeah. It's
so common, but we don't talk about it. Do you know how many women are affected by fistula? Just in this country, Somalia has like special houses.
Yes.
For girls with fistula, but no one talks about it. And it's such a simple operation to fix.
Stigma by itself.
There's stigma, but it's such an operation to fix this. But no one funds it. No one's funding this. It's crazy to me. It's literally, she just needs a small operation in a clinic. You don't even have to go to a big hospital. It can be done in a small clinical room.
Oh wow! Okay.
You just needs to suture that vagina wall again.
And
she'll be fine. Her whole life, it makes a massive change to her whole life. But our governments are not even thinking of this. They focus on something else. We put so much effort towards COVID.
And a lot of billions in dollars.
Billions to COVID.
Well, most of that was stolen, but it's okay.
This is you saying this.
That's another discussion.
But what I'm saying is, but you see how we are conditioned, right? So if you look at our minds, look at how we've been conditioned. Like we've been conditioned to so much focus on a virus we couldn't even see. We were fighting something we could not see. Who even knows this whole thing? I'm not.
Is it real or not?
Yeah. I'm sure. Listen, I don't want to trigger people who.
Where there's that question, it's open. Everyone is asking.
For me, whether it was real or not, for me, we need to really ask ourselves, why did we focus so much on that? Where 3 million girls in Africa risk 3 million girls are cut every year in Africa. That we're not shutting down streets, locking people down for it, asking why is that actually...
How can we address it?
Why are we not addressing this? And the cutting leads to so many problems, like fistula. Like it really affects her whole life. Unless that's fixed, it affects her whole life. There's no way. The stigma, and then she's again ostracized, even though adults were in that situation.
Yes.
Where she's mutilated, then married off. I don't like the word marriage, by the way. I like to clarify this. I'm using air quotes.
Yes.
I hate one of the things I'm challenging in the space that I work in is language.
Yes.
Language has such an impact, right? The way you frame something has an impact on how you deal with it.
Yes.
So when we're saying child marriage, we're saying, we know it's wrong, but you brush the word marriage into it. Because marriage is something that two adults consent to.
Yes.
Like it's something two adults consent. So these girls did not consent.
And they're children.
They're children. In the West, they would never use the word child marriage. It's called pedophiles. If an adult man...
And it's a serious crime.
It's a serious crime. So why can't we give our girls the same justice? That's what I'm saying. When you're saying Leyla's fighting for African girls.
Yes.
That's what I'm fighting for.
Yes.
Because we're not giving our girls that look like us, that looks like my daughter, our daughters, are never given the same justice. Just by language. We're not even calling it for what it is. If a girl in London, white girl, blonde hair, blue-eyed, was given to a 45-year-old man, he will be in prison. He'll be beaten up in prison. He'll be lucky if he's alive. Because that's zero tolerance.
Yes.
But then why us Africans? This is how Africans, our minds have been conditioned.
Yes.
Because, we experienced abuse going back to slavery.
Yes.
Because that was so bad.
Yes.
This is not even a big deal anymore. And that's the frame of mind we need to start shifting.
So are you saying we are releasing our pain that we have experienced for a long time through slavery?
We normalized it.
Colonization.
We normalized that pain.
It's okay.
We normalized that pain. What we started doing? We started putting levels. It's like, this is not the worst one. But why is pain ever okay? Pain should never be okay. Oh my God, especially when we're inflicting it on our girls. Even our boys, like that's a whole different conversation. Like this, even when we see toxic men or toxic women, it means we've abused them as children. So there's no ever, one thing that I wish we can do in this continent it's really have a healthy conversation about children and how we treat children. Because that's what's creating these toxic people. You know, like you have to go back a little bit and relook at, like looking at our education system.
Yes.
How that impacts
Yes.
the information we give.
Yes.
So for me, what Africa needs, it needs to recharge our brains.
And reset.
And we need to reset, because it's not okay that a 9-year-old is given away to a 45-year-old man or 60-year-old man. And we brush it with the idea of culture and marriage. That's not acceptable in the other side of the world.
Yes.
Rightly so.
Yes.
Why is it okay for us? That's the challenge.
Yes.
And I'm challenging that to all of your listeners.
Yes,
too.
yes, yes.
Why do we think that's okay? Ask yourself, why is it okay when it comes to our children? Somehow it's okay. It's okay for us to be poor. It's okay for us not to look after our children. It's okay for us to abuse our girls.
Yes.
But in the other side of the world, that's not acceptable. There are laws and policies that protect you. But here we normalized it. Even we don't acknowledge it.
Yes.
See what I mean?